Okay, everyone. Today I'm going to just give you a basic look of what Photoshop looks like when you first open it up. Now I'm using Photoshop 2020, but the newer versions may look slightly different than this, but this should give you a basic idea. Now I'm not expecting you to know everything. This is to just give you a basic feeling of the interface when you first see it. So the first thing I'm going to start with is this right here, which is your toolbar, and I'm going to click on that little arrow to bring over all of these different tools that are available to you. Now, one of the things I want you to be aware of is whenever I click on this, if you look up here, you'll see that this contextually changes based on what we have selected. And by default, what you're going to see is, if we go under Window here, Workspace Essentials. So you can change the way that your Photoshop environment looks based on this kind of workspace idea. And one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this learning template as well as these libraries because I'm going to teach you, so you don't need to learn from Adobe. And the libraries, while helpful, are not something that we're going to really get into too much. So now we've got this nice cleaner interface right here. And just to make it easier, I'm going to go to Workspace, and I'm going to create a new workspace, which is I'm going to call Clean Default. All right, so that there just gives me a nicer list. So you can customize this to the way that you like. So let's take a look first at these different tools. So right here you've got the Move tool, and when you look at these, you'll see that some have these small little triangles next to them. That means that there are more items underneath it. We've got the Move and Artboard tool. These are things that kind of allow you to change or the way that objects are seen. Then we've got these selections, the three selection choices right here. We've got the shape changing, so we've got rectangular, elliptical, single, and single column. We've got one of our the oldest tools with selection, which is the Lasso tool, the polygonal lasso tool, and the magnetic lasso tool. Next to this, we've got the newer object selection tool, the quick selection tool, and the magic wand tool. We'll get into all of these very, very soon. Next, we have something that allows you to kind of change the crop or the view of this. You've got your normal crop tool, the perspective crop tool, and then the slice tool, which we don't use that much anymore. Over here, we've got the kind of placement tool, something else that I don't use that much. Then we get into things like selection. So we've got our eyedropper tool, 3D material eyedropper tool. We're not going to get into 3D too much in this course, but it is available here. And the color sampler tool, which allows you to kind of do multiple samples. The roller tool, which allows you to kind of see what measure things in pixels, inches, whatever the default is. The note tool, which allows you to add notes if you're doing something collaborative, as well as the count tool, which lets you kind of add little numbers within the items. Next, we're getting into the retouching tools here, and you can see that we've got the spot healing brush, the healing brush tool, the patch tool. All of these are different things where where Photoshop kind of does some stuff for you. And whenever you have Photoshop or any sort of AI do art for you, sometimes it can be bad. Also, the Content Aware Move tool, which is something that is a wonderful demo, but we never ever use. And then the Red Eye tool, which Alan doesn't really need. But if you ever have those photos that have a little bit of red eye from the flash, you can get rid of that. Now we've got into our brush tools. These are the things that you use to make marks if you're doing digital painting. Over here, we get into some more retouching with the clone and the pattern stamp tool. Then we have a really nice thing, which is the history brush tool, which allows you to basically paint in undos. And then the art history brush, which is really nice if you want to make a photo look like it was taken in a mall kiosk in the 1990s with the Rembrandt filter. Over here, we get into the eraser tool. We also have the background eraser tool, which is something that is similar to the magic wand tool with a delete and the magic erase tool. So both of these using the computer to try to guess for you, sometimes helpful, sometimes not. Now we'll get into gradients and the paint bucket tool, as well as the 3D material drop tool. All of these allow you to kind of spill out either a color or a gradation of colors over things. Next we have these tools are kind of coming from photo retouching, so blur, Sharpen, and Smudge tool. The blur tool and the smudge tool are destructive. The sharpen tool is trying to recreate something, and with any photo manipulating thing, whenever you're trying to recreate something or bring back detail, it doesn't always work. So it's doing a little bit of magic behind the screens, but it's nothing amazing. Here you've got your classic photo tools, burn, dodge, and sponge, which allows you to add or decrease saturation. Burn and dodge. Dodge will lighten the image, dodge will make it darker. Then we've got our vector tools. We're not going to get into vector tools that much because we'll be doing that in Illustrator. Same thing with our text tools and the selection tools. All of these are vector based, and we're going to talk about those when we talk about Illustrator. Next, we've got our different vector shapes, same thing there. And then we've got our hand tool and rotate view. Both of these you can just do with a quick shortcut of just pressing down the space bar. And then the zoom key, also something that I don't use that much. I use the plus, the command plus and command minus key to do that. Then we've got our different colors, our foreground and background color. You can switch these to black and white. Right here is something that can be a quick gotcha, which is the quick mask mode. It's an incredibly powerful tool, which we'll get into later, but it also can be something that trips you up. Whenever you press it, you might see over here in the layers panel, which we'll get into in just a second, that'll turn into red, which means that you're in quick mask mode, but if things aren't working the way you expected, check to make sure that this isn't. This will also allow you to kind of go to full screen mode as well as presentation mode, and you can see that you can press escape to get out of that. So those are your different presentation modes. That's the toolbar. As I said, we'll go into each of these tools a little bit more, and if you want to bring things back, you can just click there. This is the contextual menu, and like I said, this changes depending on what's selected. And then we get over here to some other palettes. We've got our undo or history palette, which is going to be really important for the history tool brush. Then you've got your different colors. You can get to this by either double-clicking this as well, but this is kind of a quick way to get to it. Swatches, which are predefined colors, your gradients, and patterns. We usually just stick it to colors. Properties, which is going to give you different properties based on what's selected. Adjustments, which we will get into what adjustment layers are in a second. Then layers, which is something really important for us to understand, as well as channels, which is going to be RGB, red, green, and blue. We will talk about that later. And paths, which are basically selections that you've pre-made. And then down here at the very bottom, you can see that you've got some different ways of affecting these different layers. So this, like I said, is, and then we have a whole bunch of different options as well up here, the most important being the help function. If you're ever looking for our tool and you don't know where it is, let's say layers, you can turn that on, and if you go over top of that, that'll bring up all of the different tools within the menu bar up here that's available. So that is the basic tour of the interface of Photoshop. Once again, I'm not expecting you to know any of this. It's just to get you accustomed to it. And I will see you guys later.